Hey, thanks for watching today. This video is going to cover North Carolina tax deed auctions. We've been learning about these for a while now, so this is going to be your introduction to how those tax deed foreclosure auctions work in North Carolina. It's coming right at the heels of the South Carolina auction season, so as that auction season closes out, if you are a local investor, you might want to consider North Carolina tax deeds. And these are pretty interesting auctions from what we've learned so far. We're just learning it as well, so we're happy to share with you what we know so far and go through an introduction as well as how to find these properties, research them, and even participate in the auction several different ways. So let's get started. So North Carolina tax deed auctions, they're also going to be called tax foreclosure sales. If you're on Google searching on some of the sites, you might see them known as tax foreclosure sales. What you have in these auctions are properties that they've already hit 3 years or so, give or take, in tax delinquency. It depends on the county when a property goes to auction, but there's typically at least 3 years, maybe more, tax delinquency going on. So these are very delinquent properties by the time a tax investor is looking at the tax deed. Another interesting point is that the county has already gone through the foreclosure process on these properties when they make it to auction. So essentially they've already gone through and done those foreclosure steps on your behalf. When you talk about tax deeds in different states, they're talking about them in different levels of maturity, from properties that have had no foreclosure process completed to quite finished ones. This is one of those where a lot of that process has been completed before the tax deed investor steps into the picture. So where are these auctions? We have found that they're typically at the county courthouse, and they are all in person from what we've seen. None of these are online. When are the auctions? They actually occur throughout the year. So a lot of states, we talk about the tax auction season. North Carolina seems to be year-round availability to investors. What happens to those leftover tax deeds that are not purchased at auction? Well, these leftover tax deeds, they are sometimes available from the counties. I say sometimes because there's not any leftovers, and if there are, they might get purchased pretty quickly. So by the time you look at the county website, there may be zero at any given time, or maybe just a handful. They're also called surplus properties or county-owned properties. There is an entirely different process for buying those. It is a multi-step process. We are not going to cover that in this video. We're just going to focus on the tax deed auctions, the pending auctions, and the upset bid process. So how do those tax deed auctions work? They follow a premium bid format like most deed auctions do. So you have the starting bid that's going to include all the taxes, fees, interest, penalties, overhead, maintenance costs, whatever you want to call it, that have gone into this property. Anything that the county has had to, or city has had to spend so far or have lost in revenue. And in addition to that premium bid format, like once the auction has closed, there's this really interesting piece in North Carolina called the upset bid. And this is a procedure that lets people come back and buy a property. An investor can pick it up after the auction is complete. So let's talk about how that works. So up to 10 days after the sale of a property, anyone can still bid with what's called an upset bid, and they're going to submit that to the county. And essentially, when they submit that upset bid, that 10-day window resets again. So if there are going to be 5 consecutive upset bids, you're looking at somewhere around 50 days possibly for that to play out, because it keeps resetting that 10-day window in perpetuity. So the other really interesting thing, and probably the most confusing part of the upset bid procedure, is the upset bid formula, because you're thinking like Price is Right rules. Can I just outbid the person by $1? Can I or incrementally just take the winning bid and add a penny to it or something crazy like that? That's not how it works. There's a formula for how you must bid if you're placing an upset bid. So here it is. You have to take the winning bid and you have to add 10% of the first $1,000, which is $100, plus 5% per $1,000 after that. So that's confusing. That's essentially $50 per $1,000 after that. So let's just walk through an example, and we're going to take a $5,000 winning bid. Let's say I won a property for $5,000, and just to let you know that it may not be a round number like this, but we're going to use a nice round number for our example here. So the upset bid is going to be that $5,000 winning bid plus 10% of $1,000 plus 5% of that remaining $4,000. So The 1,000 and the 4,000 is how you get to the 5,000. And so if you look at my bottom line here, you're going to take the $5,000 winning bid. You're going to add $100 to it because that's 10% of 1,000, and then you're going to add $200 to that because that's 5% of 4,000. And what you end up with is $5,300 as the upset bid. So another common question that you always should ask, if you're not, you really need to think through, what about redemption in any type of tax investing scenario? So owners can redeem up to the day before the sale, but not after. And you think about it, this is because they've had essentially at this point years of letters and notices and bills that they've essentially ignored up to this point or not been able to pay. So now they're several years into the process, so the sale is actually the end of their redemption period. One minor exception is that anybody can challenge the sale within 10 days. For example, if there's some type of exception or mistake, I think you'd probably have to prove that some of the notices weren't sent at the right times to the right people or something, probably an error on the county's part in order to appeal a challenge on the sale and actually get something out of it. So we've walked through the format, the process, the procedures for upset, redemption. Now let's lay it out in a timeline and just talk about what the tax foreclosure timeline looks like. When a property becomes tax delinquent, a tax collector is going to issue a tax lien. Now don't get confused. The public cannot buy these tax liens. That tax lien is issued to the county by the state. So behind the scenes, a lot of states use tax liens even though you can't go buy them. The county begins the foreclosure process after that. And this is going to take years, like I mentioned earlier, but that legal foreclosure process, in addition, can take up to 12 months, give or take. It's as long as it takes them to do that foreclosure process. And ultimately, they're not going to sell at auction until the 12 months is over. And then you finally get to that tax deed, and it's sold at auction, but we have that little footnote here about the upset bid procedure because it's not totally sold yet until the upset 10-day period is over. And that looks like this. You have this upset bid procedure at the end, and every 10 days, if someone has placed another upset bid, it keeps repeating until the property is sold and 10 days go by without receiving a new upset bid. So it's an interesting place for an investor. You could even just kind of be the heartbreaker and just inject yourself at that last step and just do upset bidding if that's what you want to do. But there's several places along this timeline that may be of interest to you, so let's break it down a little more. I talked about the redemption period earlier. Even though you're going to read in a lot of places that North Carolina has no redemption period, they're talking about after the auction. So let's really think about this. From the time of the tax delinquency through the time that it sells at auction, that really is the redemption period for the owner. Remember, there is a tax lien hanging out there to the county. There's still a foreclosure process going on. So there is a redemption period during that process before the auction. And the reason I point this out is because I get people all the time asking me about researching owner redemption periods, maybe finding an owner and buying their redemption rights. This is when you would have to do that. You would get it before the auction. Sometimes maybe during that foreclosure process is when you would buy from the owner directly. So let's talk further about some of the durations here. In between that issuing of the tax lien and the county foreclosure process beginning, that can take 3 years, give or take, and it depends on the county, how fast they are, maybe some of their procedures. So, but a good rule of thumb is around 3 years. Then while we're moving to the right here, that foreclosure process that leads up to the tax deed sale, that could take up to a year plus whatever time to schedule the tax deed. They may have to wait and let some properties that are ahead of it in line get through before they can schedule it. And then lastly, we've mentioned the 10-day period quite a few times. That occurs there at the upset bid procedure, and then it repeats. It just keeps repeating until nobody is bidding. So hopefully that's a good illustration for you to get your head around the timeline of a tax foreclosure property in North Carolina. So we've talked all about how the auctions work, the upset bid format. We're going to talk now about the pending auction kind of bucket of properties, some of those strategies, and actually where to find these auctions and how to research the properties and buy them. So let's switch gears and go to our live demo. So you'll see on the screen the map of North Carolina, and basically this is Parcel Fair, the tool that we use to research, and this is what the YouTube channel is about. You're probably familiar with it. I'm looking at just starting from the western part of the state. I can see some blue and yellow properties in the mix here. If you've used Parcel Fair before, you know that yellow properties indicate something that is an auction that is scheduled. You'll notice this auction is going to be in 2024 for this property. And if you've used Parcel Fair, you know that blue properties are just tax deeds. So what we've done is whenever an auction basically is pending schedule, instead of confusing people and putting it in this yellow gold outline, we leave it in the blue tax deed outline, which means this tax deed is hanging out there waiting for the auction to be scheduled. So that's how visually on the map you're going to see these properties. The yellow ones have been scheduled for auction, like this one, and the blue ones are just tax deeds waiting to be scheduled for an auction. If you wanted to filter, we're actually going to spend a lot of time on the calendar here, but let's talk about the map. I'm looking at all the counties in one place right now. Let's filter to a single county with 77 properties available. And let's just look at properties with improvements. It takes it down to 15. And we'll just click on that. So now we've filtered from hundreds of properties down to 15 that might interest me. And I can scroll through the photos on the right side and see some of those properties directly there. So that's how this tool can save you a lot of time, is through searching, whether it's across the whole state or in a single county at a time. You can really hone in on your strategy by using the search filters. And there's a lot of people that ask about lists. They really just want the county list. And so let me show you, we have a way on any of the map searches, you can view the results in a grid, save it to a list for later, or download a CSV spreadsheet. So if you are a list person and don't want to look at the map, we have the options to do however you want to do it. So if you click view in a grid, this is going to see, you're going to see this basically. We have the 766 properties here. I've sorted them by the building value. You can sort them by whatever column you want. But ultimately, if you see an amount due, that means the auction has been scheduled. If you don't see an amount due, that means that we're still waiting on the date and the amount that's going to auction. So those are going to be the pending ones. And so this is how you would look across all those counties if you wanted to see it in a view like this. And you could also export to a spreadsheet here too, if that's how you prefer to look at it. So another way to look at this is using our auction calendar. I've selected North Carolina, and I'm using a rolling auction or rolling calendar format, so it just looks at basically the upcoming months. And so what I'm looking at is December, and it looks like a lot of auctions, but what you're ultimately seeing is anytime a county on any given day has an auction coming up, you're going to see the parcels 3 available, 1 available, 4 available coming up. So a standard tax foreclosure auction is going to look like this one in Davidson, and we can either map or list the properties in that auction. An upset bid, we still treat it like an auction, and we really thought about how to do this best for your convenience. Since the upset bid is still date driven, it has an end date, we want to put it on the auction calendar so you can look at it in the scope of all the other auctions. So you'll notice December 7th, Thursday, there are 3 parcels in a Rowan County upset bid. So technically it's not an auction, you're not going to an auction in person, but there are 3 parcels here that we can take a look at that are due up for an upset bid. Quickly here you can see the amount due is basically the current going bid for the property. So this top property has a $44,000 current bid. You're going to have to upset bid higher than that, like we talked about earlier. But the total value is only $28,000, so it's probably not something I would go after. The next 2 are more interesting to me because the amount due is lower than the total value, so you're looking at potentially a better discount on the property. This bottom one in particular has a $100,000 current bid, 21 acres, $207,000 value with a structure on it. So to me, that one looks like something I'd be more interested in just because of the numbers. So that's how I would look at some of these upset bids, just kind of scrutinize it into a way that makes sense, finding a good deal. So, and our auctions, we do have some as late as January as well. So one thing you don't see on this particular screen are the pending auctions. And remember, when we call them pending, it means it's pending a schedule. It doesn't have a date yet, so I can't show you on a calendar since it doesn't have a date. So if you wanted to see those, I would recommend doing something like this. You go to the North Carolina and then select your county. Let's clear our filters out because I want to select in my inventory dropdown the pending auction. Okay, that's one bucket of all the pending auction properties, and there's 72 in this case. And so these are unscheduled. You could consider them, they're in the foreclosure process or they're ready to be scheduled, but let's view those in a grid. And so I could just sort by the total value, clicking that column, and go by the properties that look like they're something I would be interested in buying. So again, some of you will find the pending bucket to be kind of a nice strategy if you like to contact owners and buy redemption rights or buy property outside of an auction. Some of you won't care about that. So we've talked about the upset bids, which are going to be visible here on the auction calendar. We talked about the regular foreclosure auctions like these that just say foreclosure auction on them. You can map those, you can list those. Let's just view these on the map and take a look. So there's two properties here. I'm going to find this on map and take a closer look. So yeah, this is a good example. It looks like a land only. It's about half an acre for $62,000 in a nice neighborhood. So this is an example where there's $8,000 due. The value is $62,000. So if you were bidding on land, this is where you do the math to figure out what your bid should be. Now, if you want to participate in this auction, you see the purchase option box here. This is one of the most important things in all of Parcel Fair when you're using our tool, is we will show you where and how to buy at an auction, over the counter, or anything. So let's click on that and see. We can tell that this is actually available on a January 4th at 1 p.m. At the Henderson County Courthouse. And really what's most interesting about North Carolina and how they sell these is that a law firm will actually conduct the auction. And you'll notice when we click on tax sale information to buy it, you'll get this link to a law firm that is going to be conducting this auction in particular. So I think you probably compare that to something like Texas. I think they do something similar where you would go through law firms to essentially conduct those auctions. Now on this website you can also see we link to the auction list, and so for this particular law firm, here's the auction list, and you can filter it, search it. You could go by county, just different ways where you can cut that list up and take a look at it. It's a lot of pages to go through, so that's where you would normally be looking for these foreclosure listings. So let's look at a few more properties before we close out here. Just for some variety, you can see the total value, and this is $187,000. The opening bid on the auction is going to be $26,000. So you can see the value here, what kind of deal and price range you're dealing with for a residential property that doesn't appear to be in bad shape. So this one, again, you're going to go through the process here of our purchase options to go sign up for the tax sale and view what the listings say. Let's check out another one. This is in a different county, Stokes County. This is land and structures, 3.7 acres, worth $110,000. There is no amount due because this one is pending auction, so we don't know when or how much yet. But you could get ahead of this and try to buy that property still, or just wait for it to go to auction. Another one, I wanted to include this because it's sort of multiplex. A lot of people are interested in those. At least it looks like it from the multiple doors on the picture. That's about as far as I look before I put it in here. But this one's also pending auction in Catawba County, worth $500,000 roughly. And we don't know the auction amount yet because it is pending auction. Again, for more variety here, this is also pending auction, $300,000 house. You can see big variety in, this is better condition than most tax deeds that you're going to find. Another pending auction here. This looks commercial with a parking lot, $300,000 valuation. Yeah, just a lot of these are pending auction. This one's also a residential looking property in the woods, $131,000 that will be going to auction eventually. Another pending auction here in the neighborhood. So yeah, you get the idea. A lot of variety here in what you're going to find. Let's take a look at some that are actually in an auction, not pending. So let's take... actually, you know what? Let's take a look at an upset bid property. I'm just going to take the first one I find, and we're going to look at it this way. Unfortunately, I picked one without a street view, so Google did not drive to this property. But we'll take a look at this upset bid anyways. The amount due is $57,881. That means that's the current going bid on the property. The valuation is about triple that. And the upset bid process, you're actually going to go through the process with the county on that. And that pretty much covers, we've talked about the formula and how to submit those. So that's all you need to know there. So I hope you've enjoyed getting a view of North Carolina's tax deed auctions. And this has been a learning experience for us. I've learned a lot from our users who've been helpful, telling us about the different counties and procedures. So thank you for helping us out and participating. I love to collaborate and learn this stuff together. So if you have questions or want to talk about this, reach out. Let's talk. And let me know how your North Carolina tax investing is going. Thanks.